And we do that using 3 colors.
All right, so let's move straight into the story now. And today we meet one of the many South Africans who fought for the freedom and liberation we experience today. Many were detained under apartheid laws, harassed by the security police, forced into exile and shunned by their families.
And today's story is about Horst Kleinschmidt, who is one of those.
Born in Swakopmund, Namibia in 1945. I was still a small kid when my parents moved to Johannesburg, and so I grew up actually in Johannesburg, and I identify far more as a South African than as a Namibian. But I mention the Namibian bit because that is where my home language German stems from, and we spoke German at home, and I was also sent to the German school, and I was lucky to have had a teacher at the German school who made it his thing at the school to contradict and counter what we were taught at home politically. He made sure that we heard the other side to what I heard from my father. Then I went to university, and there I went to Wits. That's where I got a scholarship to become a teacher in Afrikaans and in German. And got more or less involved in politics step by step. I was interested in what NUSAS, the liberal left-wing student union, was doing, and I went to listen to this in 1968 at the Wits National Conference, and there were only 3 black students. At one stage the president said, and we all stand up now and we sing Die Stem, because we all want to prove our loyalty to the country, however critical we are. I stood up and I sang Die Stem in its English and Afrikaans version, and sat down again, except the guy opposite me, he didn't stand up. And when we sat down, he stood up and sang Nkosi Sikelele, which I'd never heard before. But I was terribly impressed for one guy to stand up alone, hold up his fist, and sing Nkosi Sikelele. I went round the table and said, my name is Horst Kleinschmidt, I just want to say I'm impressed with your courage and your commitment. And he said, and my name is Steve Biko, and I'm a first-year student in medicine at Durban. And that's how I started a friendship with him, and we worked closely together throughout my student times. My work in the Christian Institute led to my arrest and release without charge, without court case, etc. And apparently my rearrest in 1976. I was tipped off that I would be rearrested because I'd promised in detention that I would never go back to Bay, the Dominee Beyers Nodeer who ran the Christian Institute. But of course, you lie in jail as you would. And I went straight back to the Christian Institute, and I was surrounded all the time. I had 6 months where I always had cars following me. I always had people outside watching who was coming and who was going. You begin to live a very strange life. Anyway, I fled. I then spent 15 years abroad, 3 in Holland and 12 in London. My family have never forgiven me, so I remain a serious outsider to my relatives in the broader sense. We didn't expect that South Africa would gain its democracy as early as it did. I thought it would take much longer. I haven't been a member of the ANC for nearly the entire free period since democracy. I didn't think as a civil servant I should be a member of a political party either, to my detriment, because all my colleagues were members and were to the detriment of the functioning of government departments acting politically. I still think that is the principal problem that we face to this hour in South Africa. We have, on the one side, a shrill voice of white arrogance of people who feel undefeated. They are more emboldened today than they have been because of the mega failure on the other side of maladministration, of breakdowns, of serious breakdowns that will haunt this country for a very, very long time yet. And the more the state fails, and it will continue to fail as we are going right now, the more these two sparring parties will come to blows. And I hope that doesn't lead to violence, but we should have no illusions that we are sitting on something that can be ignited very easily at this moment. If I had to rate our democracy today, and I say this at the end of July 2019, with the knowledge of what our public debate produces in radio and television, if I see the commissions at work, if I see what the Zondo Commission does and the other inquiries that are going on and the responses to them, then I see a shrillness and a call to arms, as it were, that is very worrying. And we need to do much to allow this from festering. But for now, I will therefore call the red card, because we are at a critical crossroads in this country.
Linky Bierman and Mark Mullenberg produced today's Democracy Gauge, and it acknowledges all citizens and is powered by SABC News.
Right, with that we go to a break.